Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mommin'. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jessica.
And we're really excited to be back again.
Yeah.
So this week we had a great conversation with Lauren Stuart. She is the co-founder and CMO of Boki, which is a really innovative new product on the market that helps parents do bottle prep one-handed, which is awesome. And she, of course, will talk to you a lot more about that and some of the other uses they have found for it. She is also a mama of twins and talks about her pregnancy with twins and her NICU experience with those babies. She was very open and is very supportive of other moms and wants to be there for them as they go on their journeys as well. We really enjoyed hearing her story, and we hope you do as well.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find us at momandpodcast.com, at momandpodcast on Instagram, or you can join our Facebook group to be part of some other conversations. If you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Mommin'.
Yes, it's great to be here. I'm very excited.
Yes, we're so excited to talk to you today. And we would love if we could just get started with you telling our guests a little bit about yourself, who you are, about your family, where you live, and what you do for work.
Sure. I'm Lauren Stewart, and currently I live in El Segundo, California, a little beach community just south of the airport. Big LAX airport, lots of noise, but nice beach. I'm from Texas originally, and did not expect to be a California person at all. But here I am. It's been 13 years. I've been married to my husband, Brandon, we're coming up on our 8th anniversary. He's from here, so I couldn't get him to come back to Texas with me. So we'll be in California for forever, probably. I have 4-year-old twins, Elodie and Owen. And right now I am balancing just being a mom and working as the CMO of Boki, a baby product that we launched last year in September.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So
yes.
Great. Where did you meet your husband?
This is actually, it's one of those stories that's like a blessing comes out of something really sad. I was actually living in Dallas and worked in advertising. That's where I started my career. And my brother had moved out here. I have 2 older brothers, and the one who's just above me, he and I have always been really close. And he moved out here to pursue producing and writing in movies. That was his major. And his best friend from Texas had moved out here a couple months after him as well, and had a freak accident and passed away suddenly. And my brother was having just the hardest time. And I was 24 in advertising, and I was like, I'll move to California and live by you. This will be great. I'll stay like a couple years and then I'll go back home. And it was actually in Texas at this friend, his name was Drew, his funeral, that I met some of the friends that lived in California and kind of like hit it off with this guy named Vince, who's he's like our family, best friend. And he worked with my husband, Brandon, at DreamWorks. And then we just kept in touch while I was in Texas. And then when I decided to move out, he was like, I need to introduce you to some people. And the thing that's funny is I moved out 10 days before my birthday. And we were going to have a birthday dinner, and Vince was invited, and he had actually had plans with my husband for dinner that night. And he said, can I just bring my friend? And I was like, sure, the more the merrier. I have no friends out here except for my brother, you, and my roommate. And so we added him to the reservation, and he canceled. So there was this empty chair at my birthday, here I'm new to California. And then I met him actually like a week later, and he was like, oh, you're the girl from Texas. And I was like, you stood us up, and was just really putting it on him. And we actually became just really good friends, and then started dating. And it's been 13 years, actually, that we've been together. Yeah. He took a long time to propose. We dated a long time. think we were about 5 or
Happened.
6 years in. Yeah. Yeah. But it's, I like that story though, too, because it's, something completely sad and unexpected, but something really like great sort of connected through that came
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
absolutely.
So 13 years later, not back in Texas,
Wow.
just
Yeah.
hanging out.
Wow,
Like,
those 2 years, they lasted a long time.
yeah. My poor parents thought I would be back and I didn't come back.
Oh, I'm sure. Is your brother still out there?
Yeah, he's still out
Okay.
here. He's married and has a little boy. And actually, I was earlier when I was talking about how we're gonna make a move, we're gonna be only about 10 minutes from him, whereas right now we're about an hour away. So that'll be really nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah. My parents are stoked because then instead of when they come to visit, an hour and a half on the freeway, now it's a 10-minute drive. So
Oh, for sure.
good for everyone. Yeah.
Wow, very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good
Oh,
things
that's
to come.
awesome.
So you met your husband, you waited 5-6 years to get engaged. So what was the process like, or what was your guys' conversations around having kids? We always sort of like to get a little deeper with people about like how they knew they wanted to, or what those conversations were like.
So I brought it up. My husband is one of 6, actually. He comes from a really big family. It's a girl and then 5 boys, and he's the oldest boy. So, his sister, I think, had my nephew first, like before it came up. So, we were having the fun experience of being aunts and uncles, the best, right? Because you get to pass the baby back when they're crying, and you get to leave. But we dated a long time. So before we got married, so I knew that I didn't want to wait a really long time to have kids. We were 29 when we got married. My mom had actually had a lot of difficulty getting pregnant herself. She had endometriosis. They tried for a long time, and just knowing that being history in my family, I thought, okay, well, let's be married like a year and then we'll talk about it. And we decided that, knowing, especially to, you don't at 31 want to feel like, hey, my eggs are getting old, but the reality of time being against us. And if, I was doing the math, I'm like, if we want multiple children, like, how are we going to do this? Working in length of pregnancy and work and like all of these things. And so we just agreed that, I'd go off of birth control. A friend had recommended to me the book, Taking Charge of Your Fertility, and it is life-changing. I mean, there are things in that book that I feel like I missed out on knowledge when I was like in human sexuality class in high school and college, to just know your own body and learning how to chart and all that. And so we just agreed that, we would do it the natural way. I would track if we, month to month, basically we would decide, were we going to try? Were we not going to try? And I'm so thankful I had read that book, because knowledge is power, and all of the charting and length of time that it actually took me to get my period back. It took me 6 months after I stopped birth control, when my doctors had said, it could take 1 to 3 months. And I'm like, all right, like month 4, what's going on? And then, but in that charting too, I learned that I didn't have naturally the right progesterone level to even carry a pregnancy if I got pregnant. So it was really great when I did get pregnant. I was able to tell my doctor, like, hey, here's all my paperwork from the last couple of months. Here's, months of charting. And I see this dip at like day 6. I think your progesterone is supposed to be high through like day 10 or something. And so I started suppositories anytime we thought that I could be pregnant. And I'm so glad I knew that, because I thankfully have never had a miscarriage. And I truly believe, had I gotten pregnant and not known that, there's like a very real chance that would have been part of our story. And thankfully it's not. So I feel like maybe we got pregnant like 9 months after coming off birth control. And I do feel like the lack of progress and getting pregnant pretty quickly sort of expedited the conversation and the reality of like, okay, like we should probably actively try.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which, adds like a whole nother layer when you're like, all right, here's my week. Like, let's go. It's like pressure that no one ever really wants, but
Yeah.
you leave it up to timing. And then when you realize that it's not working out like it should, being able to have that control. And I would recommend that book. Like, I have a daughter, and for sure, when she hits puberty, I'm not going to share every chapter with her, but learning, I mean, I don't know if it's like TMI or if we want to like share everything,
Go for
but
it. Yeah.
I just remember being in high school and you've got like, discharge coming out, and I think I'm like, what is wrong with me? And then when I'm like, I don't know, 29, 30, I'm reading this book and I'm like, oh, I could have gotten pregnant really easily then, like that's what that is. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe I missed that in class, but I don't ever remember the education with that, or even being told that you could learn that much about your body. And I do feel so strongly too, like if women knew that about their body, and if you were younger and sexually like active, to have those tools might be beneficial, actually very beneficial to you, so I feel like that book is a game changer and should be on every female's reading list when they are younger.
100%. Well, and even just normalizing some of the things, like you said, like you don't know as a teenager and you're embarrassed. You want to tell your friend, like, oh, this is happening to me, or like my boobs are getting sore around this, but like it's not, hopefully now that's changed a little bit. I don't know, I'm not a teenager, but like you said, I just think having that information, especially when you're young and it's a lot to take in, it would be so helpful.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And you know what? Men should probably read that book too.
Yep.
So that they can understand what we're dealing with here, because it is not easy.
I actually had a roommate in college, speaking of like what we learn in high school, and her boyfriend at the time was super confused one day having a conversation with her, and it was about like our eggs, but I don't know if he thought it was when we get our periods or when we ovulate, or if he even really knew that. But he asked her like, oh, okay, so then like you find the egg in your underwear, and she's like, no.
Floating around
Can
in there.
you imagine that if that's what it was? But wow.
I know. That's a good reminder for us to be a little bit more open with our kids, even if hopefully you're right. Hopefully high school and middle school cover things a little bit better.
So you have twins.
Mm-hmm.
Were you shocked? Do they run your family? What was that like for you?
It was shocking. So I knew that it ran on my side of the family. I learned after we got pregnant that it also ran on my husband's side of the family. I did take Clomid. They thought I might have PCOS. Someone else didn't think I had PCOS, but who knows? And I knew that there was a chance, what is it, like 3% or something chance that if you take Clomid, you could have multiples. And all of our journey, we've sadly like fallen into the very like small percentage of things. But when we got that positive pregnancy test, they have you come in and do blood work. And then they want to check it again, like, 48 hours later to see if it's at least doubled. Mine tripled. And I had a friend, and I didn't know anything about like testing your HCG levels or any of that, except for in the back of my head, I remember my girlfriend who she had miscarried, my best friend, and the levels that she was at was in a range of like really high for a single or really low for multiples. And she had told me about that when they tested her, and I didn't even know that was a thing. So like in the back of my head, when they called me back in and told me my numbers had tripled, I was like, oh. But I definitely didn't tell Brandon that like, hey, like we're in the range of like really high for a single, or maybe the multiples. And it's funny because So we went in at 6 weeks because those levels were so high. And I swear, like in my like spirit or whatever, like before going to the doctor that morning, I swear I like had this voice that in my head that was like, it's two. But I didn't tell Brandon again, that was not part of the plan. We wanted two children, not at the same time.
Yes.
And we went to my doctor and I was on the table. Brandon was behind me. I wish I could have seen his face because so they're like doing the sonogram and the doctor looks at Brandon, who's sitting down in the chair, like can't see him. And he says, "How many kids do you want?"
Oh.
And I was like, well, and Brandon said, "Well, right now, one." And the doctor said, "You're having two." And I laughed. And I was like, "That's not funny." And he said, "I'm not joking." And he said, "Look at this." And there were two just like flickering lights, looked like little lights. And that was two little heartbeats. And I mean, shock, right? Like, because instantly, and also it's not because it's not the yay, we're pregnant. It's oh shit, there are two. So, like, what does that mean for breastfeeding? What does that mean for, you see all the like the moms with their cute little baby carrier. There's only one usually in that baby carrier. Do they make them for two? Like these are all the things that are going through my head where it was more like panic than excitement. And it was funny because when we were like out on the street back to our car, like white faced, there were two ladies that had come up to us and they said, like we heard that you were having two, because they had been in the doctor's office.
What?
They're like, "That's so great." I'm like, yeah, it's really great, but trying to just process it was the hardest thing. And I'll tell you the funniest story because so it was Super Bowl weekend that we found out, and our house was under construction. We were that weekend staining our wood floors and we hadn't told anybody. And we asked, like, do we need to get out of the house because is this toxic? And our contractor was like, "You're not pregnant, so it doesn't really matter." And I was like, so our contractor was the first person that we told. And we did have to get out of the house and we drove up to my in-laws and stayed there. And that next day I was at my friend's house. So this is like 24 hours after finding out that there's two. And my girlfriend tells me that she is 10 weeks pregnant that day. And she had already had a little boy. So I said, "How are you feeling compared to the first time?" And she said she felt awful and it was so different. And she had this like horrified look on her face. And she said, "What if it's twins? Can you imagine?" And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, do I just cry right now and tell everyone that I'm having twins and like trying to process it? But I didn't. I mean, it was so early, anything can happen. And so we really didn't want to tell, and we didn't tell anyone we were trying. We just wanted to keep it really personal because if we had had more difficulty, we didn't know what that journey and sharing would look like, right? Because I think that when it comes easy for some people, which is great. It comes very challenging for others. There's the middle of the road. I would say I was middle of the road because I knew there was the progesterone issue. I took Clomid to help the process go. And, I think now in like perspective, right, goes so long or so far, but I will never ask a woman, my sister-in-laws, friends, like, "Do you want more kids? Are you trying?" Like, I think "are you trying" is like the meanest thing to ask a woman if they aren't already open about it, right? Because that can trigger so much feeling because you never know if somebody's trying and not having any success. And I in my 20s and as my, I was probably later and among my friendship group and having children, but it had never crossed my mind that like to not ever be like, oh, well, like, when are you guys going to try? Or are you going to start trying, because maybe they have been trying for a really long time.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's my long-winded answer of yes, it was shocking. And we had the best announcement, if you want me to share that story, which was like
Yeah.
epic. So we knew we wanted to like shock our family, right? And we didn't want to tell anyone until after we had passed 12 weeks, which thankfully we did. And everyone at that point was really healthy. And so we had finished the renovation on our house like just before Easter. My parents were going to come out from Texas. And we said, like, hey, like, we really want to host Easter for everyone. We can show everyone the new house, get everybody together. And so that was like our organic story of like getting everybody to congregate. And so we found out that everyone was speculating we were going to have some announcement.
Oh, of
And
course.
so knowing that, we tried to like throw them a few curveballs and like delayed the announcement during the day. But so what we did was we told them like after brunch that I was pregnant, and we had my friend make a gender reveal cake for that moment because we already knew I had the blood test early. And so we reveal that it's a boy. We knew from the blood work that it was a boy. But what they don't tell you, my doctor told me wrong. They said when I had the blood test, they could tell me what both babies were. And that's not true. So they can identify if it's two, like you would know if it's two girls because the male DNA wouldn't be present, but they couldn't say it was two boys or a boy and a girl. So we had to wait till the anatomy scan. But so at
Oh,
like 11 weeks, we knew a boy. And then it wasn't until like week 19 that we found out that Elodie was a girl. And both my dad and my father-in-law and my husband are really great writers with poems, and they write a lot of poetry to like commemorate certain events. And so we just said like, oh, Brandon wrote a poem about us having a baby, and we asked his mom to read it. And thankfully somebody was videoing this. We didn't want to ask anybody to videotape it and give away that there was something more. But so it's all about like the new baby boy and all of this. And then at the end, it says, are you ready for the next surprise? And then you have to turn the page and it says, surprise, we're having twins. And everyone lost their mind. Like
oh,
paper flew up in the air from when she was reading the poem. You hear people laughing. People are like, no, are you serious? Like just mayhem and confusion. And it was great because we were so confused when we found out. It was really great to just like put that on
right.
everybody and see their reaction. Yeah. But that's when we found out that it was on both sides of the family as well, that there was one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yeah.
So kind of along those lines of a twin pregnancy, are you able to kind of talk about what that was like and then what delivery was like in after in the NICU?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually I was having a really great pregnancy. I felt great. I was tired, and I think it was like week 10, when their brains are developing. I don't remember what week it is. Let's call it week 10. And I just remember it was funny. I was on the couch one time and it was around that window, and I told my husband, because I could barely stay awake past like 7 o'clock. I was just
Oh
so
my
tired.
gosh.
And he was like, that's okay. You're so tired. You're building two brains this week. And I was like, that's right. I'm doing a lot this week, this week.
So sweet.
No, I was just like tired, probably just really tired. I didn't have a lot of nausea. It was kind of hit or miss, but I never physically got sick, which was great. But with you're automatically with multiples labeled high risk. So I was getting a lot of scans, and it was like around 15 weeks, Owen wasn't growing. Like the gestational weeks between Owen and Elodie. So she was baby A, he was baby B, but I had two placentas. His gestational age was tracking behind her age and growth, and she was like right on target and he was behind. And that started where it was maybe like 3 days behind, but then it increased to about 2 weeks behind. So there was a lot of concern of his growing, and they labeled it that he had intrauterine growth restriction. I had never heard of that before, and I still felt great. And that was hard to process like, okay, like there's no symptoms of anything, but something is wrong. And so I was put in June on limited bed rest where I was still approved to go to work. I had a desk job, so I wasn't, and I just sat at the desk and I was allowed to like walk to get food, get to my car, but I wasn't allowed to take my dogs on walks. I had to come home and just sit. And then it was a couple weeks later, I think it was around like 22 weeks or so. I went to see my perinatalogist and I was put on full bed rest. And during that time, Owen's heart was enlarged, but they couldn't figure out why. So they sent me to a pediatric cardiologist, and he was like, well, there's good news and there's bad news. And the good news is that I don't know what it is. And that's also the bad news, because it could have been a syndrome that they were speculating called Noonan syndrome. So it was just like a wait and see. And I think that was really, really hard. And then and then I got diagnosed with cholestasis, which I don't know if even everybody knows what that is. I had never heard of it. And I'm telling everyone, read your baby center updates, because I, at like whatever week 23, I read my baby center update that said if you are like more itchy than you've been, or it doesn't go away, because you're itchy anyways when you're pregnant, dry skin, everything's stretching. But like I could not stop itching my stomach. And I had my routine appointment and we were finishing up, and I told my doctor, I'm like, hey, like I'm really, really itchy. And I just wanted to bring it up because of what I read. And they said, oh, it's probably fine, but we can do a test if it'll make you feel better. I'm like, I think I'd like it. So they do the test and it came back positive, but then they didn't do anything about it. And then I had my perinatalogist appointment the next week and I told him, and he was like, well, what did they put you on? And they hadn't put me on anything. So like panic, and then they finally got me on some medication, which really helped. But then that was like a whole nother curveball. And it was at about 29 weeks, I had to have a follow-up echo to see how his heart was doing. And it was in that appointment that they found that the blood cord was intermittently going backwards. So it was called absent end diastolic flow, which can become fatal. And it was that like 2 days later, my doctor called me at 11 o'clock at night and said, I just reviewed the report from the specialist and you need to check into the hospital and you will probably not come home until you have the babies. And I mean, you're like, what is that? What does that even mean? What are you I'm 29 weeks pregnant. Yeah, like I felt great, minus the cholestasis and the fear, but physically, otherwise, I was doing great. Elodie was growing how she was supposed to, and they gave me a betamethasone shot to help with lung development, and I was lucky to get to 32 weeks, but I was in the hospital that whole time, and the goal was to get to a week with a 3 in front of it, because that sort of changes a lot of the outcome. So getting to 32 weeks was a really big deal, because even though he was the size of a 26-week-old baby. Owen was only a pound 13 ounces when he was born, and Elodie was 3 pounds 15 ounces. But his lungs and his heart and his brain, everything was that of a 32-week-old. The sizing was the issue. So I'm so thankful. And I was able to get a second round of that betamethasone, which helped with the lung development so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a C-section, and that was a doozy that I feel like, was like more intense than I imagined. And I didn't get to hold the babies. I didn't see them even right after. So that was a whole another level of a bad experience. You don't ever, when you get pregnant and the joys of becoming a parent, you don't imagine all of these other things that could happen. But yeah, so it was like facing it one minute at a time in those really early days and weeks. And then taking it day by day afterwards because we had challenges after they were born as well and after they were home.
Yeah, what
Wow.
was that NICU stay like for them? How
Yeah.
long were they in there?
Okay, so Elodie was there for 5 weeks. Owen
Okay.
was there for 8.
Okay.
He came home a day before my due date, which was a lot earlier, I think, than anyone expected. And
Mhm.
thank God they're fine now. They told me that all the nurses said like the little ones are actually the ones that tend to thrive and do really well because they're fighters and they've been fighting so hard to even like make it.
Mhm.
So Owen actually like breathed without the cannulas and everything before Elodie did.
Oh,
So
no.
and they each sort of had their own different experience and challenges, but
Mhm.
I didn't hold them until they were 2 weeks old.
Oh.
And I after they were in the NICU, I probably didn't go see them for the first 24 hours. Recovery was really hard for me. I actually got a blood clot in my uterus, which we discovered like several
Oh
days after. But
My gosh.
I was afraid. I was afraid to see them
Mhm.
because of how small they were going to be,
Mhm.
and I didn't know what to expect. I had never been in a NICU before. Didn't see them when they came out. And you have this whole like great, as far as like physically feeling experience, right? You were so connected to our kids in our belly and like feeling them move was like the best thing ever. And all that of excitement. Then all of a sudden it was okay. I never went into labor. I didn't hold them. So that physical oxytocin release, like none of that ever happened for me,
Mhm.
which was a very weird process to be in the hospital. Okay, the babies are out. I haven't held them. Go home, and you go home without your kids, and you knew you were pregnant, and you've seen your kids, but you haven't held them.
Mhm.
And it was a very weird, like psychological, emotional trip, really. But I was like pumping around the clock, trying to get the milk to come in, but that skin to skin is so important. And obviously, your body naturally triggers a lot of these things going through labor and delivery and and the skin to skin immediately. And I didn't have that. So it was a very weird experience because nobody understood how I felt.
Mhm.
And I didn't have time to go to therapy to therapy. Because then going to the NICU really like was my full-time job. I would go
Mhm.
for the first feed in the morning and I would leave at the last feed like before dinner, and I would pump at their bedside and not really get much milk. I couldn't hold them to the breast until after they had like learned to suck. So like I think that's another thing that not everybody, because unless you're going through it, there's a lot that you would never know. And babies that are born that early haven't learned how to suck, swallow, and breathe and that coordination. So they have to learn that in the NICU before they go home. And be able to take all of their feeds. I think it was for like 48 hours without any nasal tube
Mhm.
support before that they can come home. So, yeah, quite the experience.
Oh,
It's a lot.
what?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a really traumatic journey that you went
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
And to not be able to hold your babies for 2 weeks,
yeah.
I can't imagine what that was like for you.
It was one of those things where, I mean, NICU nurses, I mean, have my heart. Like, hats off to
Yep.
those people because I don't know. You see just innocence on the brink, right, of hanging on by a thread, but to be there to support the parents who are in it. And I had a nurse, Sujin, who just pushed the boundaries so much. And I appreciated that so much from her because no one had said, like you can hold them. And it was all these machines. And finally, I was there one night. We actually went up. They were running low one night on the milk. And so I ran up, me and my mom came and we did like a midnight run to the NICU to bring the breast milk up there. And Sujan was there, and she was like, "You still haven't held him yet, have you?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Let's do it tonight." And so it was weird. Like it was like a very disconnected yet exciting experience. But not like it was fearful. I mean, Owen at that point still weighed, I think, less than 2 pounds. So if you can imagine tissue, like the Kleenex tissue, pocket tissue, that pack, that was
Mm-hmm.
the size of his diaper when it was
Oh my
unfolded.
gosh.
So really like very frail.
Mhm.
And then I held Elodie the next day, and she was double his size, so that made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And she just sort of like melted onto me, which was the best. And that's when I finally started to feel a little bit like a mom. Like it took me a while to feel like
Mhm.
these are my children, I am their mother type of thing, because it was
Mhm.
so, I mean, it's such a sterile environment. You're like washing your hands before you touch your kid. You can't, and the NICU with babies that are that small, you're not supposed to really like stroke them, like hold their hand or anything. It's like you put like more like pressure that it's like comfort. So yeah, just a very different experience
Mhm.
than most.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm so glad you're on the other end of that and are able to sort of like just
Yeah.
share the story now, but that had to be incredibly challenging, and I'm so sorry that was your
Thank you. I mean, I
experience.
really, for what we've been through and coming out the other side of it, I'm so grateful for the experience now, because I feel like I have those milestones that are so normal and typical, right, for a healthy baby, are just huge accomplishments
Mhm.
for babies who have had challenges. And it's so rewarding to see each milestone met, even if it comes late. It happens.
Mhm.
Um, so and it was hard because they were twins, and like they didn't do anything at the same time.
Mhm.
But to and then, Elodie came home 3 weeks before him, which was actually like a nice ease into parenthood, because then it was just like, then we just added another baby.
Yeah.
It was like we had already like started the like middle of the night, stuff with
Mhm.
her, and I was already up anyways, pumping around the clock. But yeah, it's a perspective gained with much appreciation for life, and the just the milestones and the personality and accomplishments that are happening is just really really great.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I
Yeah.
think it's, if you haven't seen what that is like, I think it's hard for people to really appreciate like that the NICU is so scary, and that,
Yeah.
how little those babies are. I mean, I work in peds, and when I would float to the NICU, even as someone who worked with those babies, they're so small. Like
Mhm.
I only did it rarely, and it's nerve-wracking to like
Yeah.
give them their bath, but as mom, that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing too, I think being in there, that was really a surprise to me, is actually like how many also like large babies are in there, right? Like I would have never expected to see like a big baby, a full term
Yes.
in there, but then you've got the babies who go past 40 weeks, or gestational diabetes, and they get to leave earlier, which is great. But it's one of those things where you're in it together with the parents that are there, but everyone has different circumstances that they're facing, and you see a lot of different emotions. And you see babies leave and the new ones come, and it's hard to be like, oh, okay, we're still here. But you're
Mhm.
so happy for those who get to leave sooner, and that you are someone who gets to, even if we were there a long time, we still got to leave
Mhm.
Mhm.
earlier than some other people. So yeah, it's definitely an eye-opening experience. And I always, like, I didn't know anyone who had had a baby in the NICU, so I definitely felt alone and that nobody really understood. But since having that experience, actually one of my best friends last year, her baby was born early in the NICU, and it was very rewarding for me to be able to support her in that, her to know that I can connect to her on every level of what she is experiencing, of fear and the weight and the being at home without your baby. And that's why I feel like it's so important to share and really be open about that. Owen had some complications for the last few years as well, that I got myself into some like Facebook groups too that were really helpful to, just share and connect with people that get what you're going through, and for you to be able to share what you went through, because when you do make it through certain situations and you have what you can share, and whether it's hope or a technique of something, encouragement just goes so far. So that's what I would say to anybody is like, find people that, strangers though, that have gone through it, that you can connect to. And that's where, like, I actually usually hate social media, but I love it for the pure fact of these connections that you can make, right? You can ignore what you don't want, but you can really immerse yourself with people all around the world who get it. And that's really, that's nice.
So true.
Yes.
That's so true. And I have to say, I love that you talk about sort of the fear of parenthood too.
Yeah.
Just because I think that does happen. Like, my situation was nothing in comparison, but I too had cholestasis.
Oh, you did?
I did. And so when you said that, I was like, another person.
Yeah,
I've never met anyone.
I've never met anyone.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm like, you itch, like your hands and your feet, or what's itching? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
But so my daughter was in the NICU only for 5 days. But for me, it was like she had been home for 2 days and then had to go back.
Oh, okay.
And there was a sense of like, the nurses were amazing and angels and my heroes, but I felt like I wasn't parenting her, or like being the one in charge. And so there was that whole aspect of like, I felt really disconnected from her and feeling like I don't feel that love in that same way that other people are saying. Like, I love her, I would die for her, but I don't feel like I'm in love with her. And I felt so weird about that. So hearing you say that and talk, like I read you talk about that in a blog post you had previously, and I was like, I almost started crying because it's not something that people say, because I think there is sort of a judgment fear of that. And I think that's really important, especially for parents. If you're not able to physically touch your kid, that's a whole different element that most people don't have to experience.
Yeah, and I think it's like anything, right? Like when you even start dating your partner, that it takes time to get to know somebody and the personality develop. And then that's one thing, because I had a friend who, before I had the kids, had told me she was feeling very upset in her pregnancy because she didn't feel this like love that we are made to believe that we feel, whether it's through movies or, and I do think that people are afraid to talk about not feeling it. And I would be willing to bet that most people don't feel that instant, like, oh my God, I love you so, like I just, yes, there's love, but like you said, the in love, because that takes time. And I think it's really important for women to know, if you don't feel it, that's okay. And it will come. And it takes time, and not to feel like you can't say like, hey, this feels kind of weird. This feels off. And I don't know if I had a version of postpartum. I'm for sure like, PTSD from the whole experience. And, but I think that talking about your feelings, and especially if they're not what people perceive to be like normal or healthy, can only help you get to the place that you need to be. And to hear stories where like, hey, like I felt this too, you're not alone in that. And there's nothing wrong with not feeling it. And it comes, like, I'm obsessed and so in love with my children.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love so much that you're open about that, and I just appreciate that so much.
Good. That makes me really happy. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's part of it's part of my story. I don't know if it's part of my calling, but I find great joy and sharing, because I think it matters. And it helps me when I hear other people also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So We're totally going to shift gears here a little bit, but we'd love to hear about the business you and your husband and you started together.
So we have a partner. We have a partner in it,
Okay.
Andrew, too. So it's called the Boki, and it's basically this silicone cup that allows you to open bottles with one hand, so your screaming baby can be comforted. It allows you to transfer breast milk without knocking over the bottle. I don't know if that happened to you girls, but
Yeah.
Yes.
the very little milk that I was able to pump got knocked over several times, and that was awful. And so it stabilizes the bottle basically. And Andrew, our partner, his son, he has 3 children. His son Gunther was actually born the same day as our twins, the same year.
Neat.
And he's a childhood friend of my husband. They grew up together, and we made a lot of bottles. So I was able to I breastfed Elodie for 20 months.
Oh,
She was a
wow.
champion nurser. Based on what came out of my breast at the pump, I have no idea how that much milk came out at the breast, but after working with my lactation consultant, learned that it was very different at the pump versus at the breast. So ladies, if you're not getting at the pump, still try at the breast if you want to, but and then Owen, we tried to nurse. It was not working out. So there were a lot of bottles, and especially having preemies, you're adding vitamins and stuff to some of the milk that they have to take as well, like iron and things. And so Brandon was just like, this is so stupid that I'm setting down a baby because I have to hold a bottle steady with one hand that's literally only holding a bottle. So, and he was at my brother-in-law's bachelor party with Andrew, and we all had newborns at home. Gunther was Andrew's second, and he's an engineer. So smart. And yeah, and they were just talking about the woes of having babies at home. And Brandon talked to him about this idea he had, and he was like, I love it, totally makes sense, and started ideating on it and building the prototypes out. And we talked to friends about it, and just sort of had our own little sample group of it. And we felt like too that dads, especially in the early days, don't really get the connection that the mom has, right? And one opportunity for that connection is for dads to feed the baby and give mom a break if she's pumped the milk or just needs a nap, whatever it may be. And so we got just so excited about it. And when we got the prototypes and we had friends test it that had newborns at home, and there's nothing like it on the market. And that's where we were like, how does this not exist? It's so simple, but it works and it's super helpful. The design of it was made to look like a ceramic, so it's not like an ugly thing on your countertop either. And you can bring it with you to grandma's and take it with you to a hotel if when people can easily go back to hotels and travel. But yeah, it's just, and it's for me, one thing that is really rewarding is as we've launched it is seeing all of these other use cases for it. So we have a blog on our website where we cover a bunch of different stuff, but we recently talked about toddler independence and fostering that. And one thing that we use the Boki for at our own house is to let Owen and Elodie start to learn to pour their own drinks. So we section it to their little play table and put their cup in it. And they can't they can spill their juice, right? But their cup can't be knocked over. So if the neck of the bottle hits the cup, it won't fall over. We just posted on Instagram a video of Owen doing it. It was really cute. But yeah, just letting it evolving, and we realized too, very early on, that this could be helpful for somebody who is challenged with motor skills, that have been impacted. People who have strokes, cerebral palsy, people with one limb. We donated a bunch to the Amputee Coalition early on when we did our first run that wasn't perfect to sell, but it was still clean and usable. We donated a bunch there because there's there's so many different things we realized, but initially, yeah, just designed to open those bottles one-handed and not knock over your breast milk. It's been really fun to work on because that working on it is what brought me back into the workforce, basically. I left my job when the kids came home from the NICU. I tried to go back part-time and it didn't work out. The complications of prematurity, were delays on, we needed OT and PT, and Owen had a lot of GI and sensory issues. And I became like obsessed with the Boki. I knew it was a great idea. I had used the prototypes, but actually he had to get a feeding tube last year. And the formula that he was on was about $1,000 a month. And it was real food. It was like thinned out baby food, almost like organic, really expensive, but the healthiest thing for him. But you don't want to spill that stuff either. And you have to measure it out before you put it in the bag. And there was one day, it was before Boki had hit the market, that I knocked over a bottle of it that I had, because I would always pre-measure it. And I knocked over the bottle and I was cursing and just so mad. And I was like, what am I doing? I was like, the prototypes are like the full, like real one. And we don't even have prototypes anymore. The real ones are in the garage. And I went and suctioned it to the counter and just never looked back. And I was like, this is amazing. And so that, like, my passion for working on Boki, because with my background, I was a media buyer, I was in strategy and marketing. My husband's a creative director. Andrew's an engineer. Like, all of our skill sets together are complementary to really like make this a business. It's just the three of us who work on it. Well, we have like people who help us with our ads and PR and stuff, but like really it's just the three of us, and we're bootstrapping this because we believe in it. And we won a couple awards, which was really cool.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's just my passion for it is I'm a mom who has breastfed, bottle fed, tube fed, and I've used it for all of it. So I know how helpful it can be. And having that like personal, attachment to it has really kind of fueled, because when we decided, okay, like now that the kids are like caught up and they were going to preschool, do I go back to work? Do I not? And we thought, okay, if we were going to really like give this a fair shake, why don't I try? Because that's where my skill set has been. And it's been so great. It's been so great I worked in entertainment. And so going from entertainment to baby, it's like a whole new world, whole new world. Most everyone is a parent, so they don't mind the like screaming kids or missed meetings, but to really be passionate about something. And it was really great. I'm so glad I was able to stay at home with the kids and really get them to where they needed to be. But it has been really refreshing to, again, like be in the workspace and have adult conversations that aren't about milestones, and like remind myself, like I was smart. Like I had a good job before, and I gave it up to really like try the best for our family, and now we're trying something different, and it's fun. It's really rewarding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so exciting too. I mean, it seems like it's taken off pretty quickly too. Like, so there's clearly that need. And I know what you're talking about when you're trying to hold a baby and you're like, okay, well, let me.
My husband calls it like the like T-Rex arms, right? You're like, you've got like the baby's like tucked under a little bit like a football, yet you're like spinning it under your armpit with your, so it's great, making a bottle while you're sipping your coffee, like whatever you need, like that extra hand doesn't always have to be for the baby. We always joke about like sometimes like you need your coffee or a cocktail while you're mixing that bottle of formula or pouring some breast milk, just give yourself a break. But yeah, it's fun.
Oh, I love that.
But it's fun. It's rewarding for sure. A lot of people forget what it takes to become a brand or a product. And, like we're tiny. We're not Graco. We're not Munchkin. We are Brandon, Lauren, and Andrew from Boki, and we're doing it because we believe in it and that it's part of our story. I like that there is this personal connection, that like this isn't a huge brand that came out with something new. It's like these are parents out of our own experience solving a problem that we felt like other parents must have, that we wanted to make it a reality. So yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
What has been your biggest takeaway from like doing this? Any like biggest thing you've learned from doing this about yourself, about starting a company, whatever that might be?
I think like I'm really proud that we went for it. So my husband, ever since I've known him, he has idea after idea after idea. But Boki was the first idea that I was like, man, like that's something that is really cool, because it wasn't that it was making a product that already existed better, right? This is like there's nothing out there like it. So inventing something that doesn't exist, that's really useful. Like breast milk, people cry all the time because they've knocked over their breast milk. So, and like I've learned, because I had never used a silicone pump, but I've since learned that they fall over really easily when they're full. So we have a lot of people that use the Boki to just even set their silicone pump in on their nightstand so it doesn't fall over. So I think the most rewarding thing is actually seeing this idea become something that is useful to other people, not just ourselves, and then having it validated, like, through sales. We won an award for from the JPMA, the most innovative baby product of 2020 under $25, and that's really validating. And then for me, just personally being back in the workforce in some capacity has been really nice to remind myself, like, you're more than a mom, right? So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're excited to see what all you do. I love that so much.
Thank you.
Oh, so we are going to switch gears again, if you're okay for a couple more. We're going to do some rapid fire end of podcast questions for you. Awesome.
Do it. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Do you have a goal for your family, either the near or far term?
Yeah. Well, so we're moving. My goal, and we're renovating the house actually, is the kids have been very chaotic lately. They're now saying when coronavirus is over, they know that life is not what it should be. So my goal is to try to kind of maintain the chaos a little bit better than I'm doing right now, because I feel like I'm juggling a lot, and that it's hard not to be hard on yourself when the TV has to babysit, right? And I know we're all there. So my goal is to really just try, especially going into the holidays, when holidays are crazy anyways, and we're in such like a weird world and space, and then like with the move, is I'm trying to keep more calm in the family, because I feel like it's gotten out of hand a bit. So moving into the holidays and finishing out the year, and this big transition to the house, because we haven't explained to them yet, because they're not going to understand. Just this, like, creating a calm and getting into this new phase in our life, and the new house that will hopefully be really beneficial for us as a family. So yeah, calm is the key word. Calm over chaos.
Yeah. I think we all feel like that right now. Or yes. What is something that you do to unwind for yourself?
I tell my husband that I'm going to go downstairs with a glass of wine, watch a Hallmark movie, and not to talk to me, or I'll take a bath. But usually, wine and a Hallmark movie. And I love time by myself, and I don't get a lot of it. So if I can get even just like an hour of like silence, or just veg out and not, have to really think or produce, goes a long way. I got to walk through Target the other day for an hour at like 8:00 at night. I don't think I'd been in Target since March. And it was great. I touched things and smelled candles, but just like silence and going at your own pace goes so far. And it's important that everybody try to get that because it's hard to come by. But yeah, that's what I do for myself. Small candles and touch base or at Target or unwind with a glass of wine in a movie.
I love it.
Yeah, those are great. What for you has been the most surprising part of being a parent?
Oh, I think our journey, but separately from that, seeing the kids discover new things, like when they discover music for the first time and animals and just the curiosity that they have, I think is so cool to see unfold. I talked earlier about like how great it is to be an aunt, right? Because you give the kid back. So you miss a lot of like the build though, like what it takes to start crawling, and all of that hard work they put in. So I think it's just that. I mean, watching it unfold and discovering things is really cool to see it through your kids' eyes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question. And I think I know part of this. So I'm sure you have a favorite parenting product, the Bokey.
Obviously.
Do you have a favorite parenting tip at all?
Okay, so I will share another favorite parenting product, but this is just for parents of multiples because this one saved my life and I used it forever. And it's the one thing besides Bokey that I recommend to all the people I know having twins is the Twinsy nursing pillow.
Okay.
Because you can nurse two babies if you so choose. I tried that like a handful of times and it was not for me. I felt like a mama pig with like babies like but it is great because I actually too like that the way that it's shaped, you can use it to nurse both babies at the same time, but you can also put it on the floor or the couch, and the way that it's cut out, you can kind of like prop a baby in each little like nook, and then you can bottle feed. I actually used to lay it on the floor. I'd breastfeed Elodie and have Owen on the pillow while I bottle fed him at the same time. And the way that like you can configure this thing is great. And then they used it as like loungers when they were toddlers too. I mean, that one's a really good one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The twin mom life. Yeah. I mean, that is some legit parenting that I don't think I've done.
This has just been so great, and
it's been really fun.
Yeah. There is one more, and that's where people can find you or find Bokey.
Yeah. So it's the Bokey, and it's BOKEE.com. And then our Instagram is the.Bokey. So I would love, anybody to check it out. We welcome feedback. And this has been really great. It's been so fun to talk to you girls. And like, this has been like, so, life-giving to me. Unwind time too, not interrupted. It's been great. It's been really great.
Oh, we've loved chatting with you. Yes. Thank you so much for being so open too. You have an amazing story, and we're grateful that you were willing to share it.
Thank you. And I would say too, honestly, if anyone that hears this like wants to reach out, please contact me about any of it, because I think sharing is really great, and I would actually love to hear from people. So if I could be a resource in any way from this story, I welcome any of it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Because I'm sure there are, NICU mamas of twins is even different than than everyone else's experience sometimes. So great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Take care. All right, bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Lauren. We hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. If you like this episode, we would love it if you would head over and give us a rating and review. You can find us at momandpodcast.com, at Mom and Podcast on Instagram, and our Mom and Podcast Facebook group. Thanks again for listening. Bye.